My wife and I are having a baby in July. And I want our child, thank you, to have a truly awesome experience in school. And I'm already thinking about that. I believe that it's possible. Do you believe that our youth are having a truly awesome experience in school? What do you really think about our school system?
It would be better to have no school at all than the schools we now have. Encouraged instead of frightened, children could learn several languages before reaching age of 4.
But is it necessary to disassemble the institution completely?
Play'd be play instead of being as now, release of repressed anger.
Let's consider our public education for a moment. Public education in a democracy helps to ensure that every voter have a basic understanding of the political system so as to make an informed decision on the ballot. And we've decided that every citizen should have an equal opportunity to get a standard education so as to get a job and participate in our modern economy. Equal opportunity, but higher education is divided into 2 institutions, one for academic study and another for vocational training. And our children are gradually streamlined towards one or the other of those, and we don't really talk about that. Here in Fort McMurray, we've established the Community College, which aims to serve the mandates of both the academic and vocational institutions. Our educational system is funded through a combination of tax dollars and private donation. And by altering the amount which taxation supports the system, we can determine whether decisions about our children's education are being made by the business community or by the voter. These reports by Statistics Canada tell us that our system has an inherent gender bias, that female students outperform male students in all areas except science and math. And our government routinely measures the 3 R's, literacy, and no such report is published with regard to creativity. I mean, design, fine arts, multimedia, or even our students' ability to use software productively. Our government measures attention ability because our students are having difficulty paying attention in school, let alone learning. And the problem is bad enough that 10.3% of male and 6.6% of female high school students will drop out this year. Alberta Education tells us that $6.4 billion were spent last year in the province to support kindergarten through grade 12. That's the most that Alberta has ever spent in a single year, but the rate of increase is below that of inflation, and so continues the year-over-year decrease in public investment in our school children. So with minimal economic burden upon the taxpayer, our current system intends to develop competent individuals who can function normally in society, and hopefully they can pay attention and not drop out. It's kind of a bleak picture. I think it's a relatively low standard, actually, and I believe that we can do a lot better. The real question is how, and if changes are to be made, which changes will be most beneficial? I'd like to suggest then these 3 changes. 1, I believe the entire educational institution should undergo a complete and radical agile transformation. Let's admit that the current system was designed and built in a bygone era. It's enormous, and it has a lot of inertia. And yet every aspect of our society is changing very rapidly, and our students are all really unique. An agile transformation would do for education what lean methods have done for manufacturing and software development. That is, help ensure that students are receiving a valuable education relevant to their individual needs, and ensure that the system can adapt as quickly as it learns of technological advancements or changes in our demographic, financial, or regulatory circumstance. We can start now by simply agreeing that change is, in fact, the only constant. So let's design agility into the system. Also, I think our curricula should be redesigned with, at their core, game mechanics and self-organizing collaborative social networks. Psychologists are understanding that our children's brains are being rewired by video games and digital media, that in fact our youth are learning and thinking in ways which are fundamentally different than previous generations. Add to that the new complexity of social interactions in which we are all engaged, and wow, pedagogy has never been so awesome. I had the opportunity a few years ago to design 3 new courses at Keyano College in audio and recording technology. In one course called Music Technology, I asked my students to write on day 1, on sticky notes, all of the things that they wanted to learn throughout the term. No surprise to me that what they wanted to learn was precisely what I needed to teach them. We put all the sticky notes on the wall under a heading called To Do, and that became known as our information radiator. I then asked the students to complete 12 true-to-life projects over the 2 semesters, and they could do any project in any order. I time-boxed our work into 12 2-week sprints, so that at the beginning of every 2-week sprint, we would have a brief planning session, and then we would do our work, either individually or together in groups, whatever the students needed. At the end of the 2-week periods, the students would then demonstrate their finished work to each other and have an opportunity for assessment and observations about each other's work. As well, we would update the information radiator and move sticky notes under a heading called Done if all the students felt that the material had been adequately covered. The students were teaching each other, and the structure allowed each student to progress through those materials as they needed, not in a linear fashion. They owned the process. And we developed better work habits through these structured, iterative interactions with each other. For another course called Music Recording Techniques, I decided we would play a role-playing game. We were a recording studio, so I made a list of projects that the students could complete individually or in groups, however they chose. And as the students would finish each project and hand it in, they would get paid, fake money. And at the end of the term, they could buy their grade. Now, that's just the first version of the idea, because I understand, in fact, that money is a limited motivator. It's expected from the work that we do, but fun and fairness, trust, personal growth, these are intrinsic motivators. So in addition to money points for each of the project, I assigned other kinds of points as well: skill, imagination, community, agility. Each project would require different sensibilities, and these points would accumulate over time and illustrate each student's individual growth in those capacities. On screen now is an example of how these game elements can be really helpful to assess and measure students' growth. It's called a radar chart, and each of those axes represents a category of points in our game. Each shape represents a student, and we can very quickly at a glance observe meaningful information. For example, Mr. Deep Red had a very well-rounded experience. Mrs. Light Green earned a little more revenue, but didn't exert as much effort in the other areas. And Mr. Light Blue, with the fewest number of projects, focusing more in the areas of imagination and skill, actually earned the most revenue. In a third course called Music Studio Production, I altered the game so that the students weren't acting as individual players, but that we were all acting as one player, working cooperatively. And this was hard. It's really hard to put the goals of a team ahead of one's own goals. The students decided to open up our classroom to the entire community, and we invited musicians in to perform and record with us. We connected our studio with others across the country to access specialists in the field, because it is so easy to network now with people all over the globe, and our students do this very comfortably, so let's bring this into the curricula. And I don't mean that we should just deliver our typical materials online, and I also don't mean that we should replace face-to-face interactions, but cooperation with people all over the globe and locally must become an integral part of our students' daily experience. School has been too focused on individual work for individual gain. And what we need is a common understanding of collective effort for collective benefit. That is how collaboration will manifest in our social system. And that would be awesome. That's what I want my child to experience. So the last change I'd like to see, to tie all of this together like a catalyst, turn our antiquated, rigid institution into a thriving social system in which innovative ideas are encouraged, and not only encouraged, but supported and shared and continually improved. It's really quite simple, actually. We must just trust teachers. And not only trust teachers, but empower them. Because our educational system should not be shaped by business ideology or politicism, but rather every decision from which light bulb should we use in this classroom to how shall we design our curricula or build our facilities should be made by teachers. As you reflect upon your own experiences, recall the best life lessons, the most influential moments. I'll bet that those moments occurred with a mentor. They were shared with a guru. Those are the people we should look to now to recreate our system. Because every one of us knows a passionate teacher, a passionate mentor. Let's empower them to recreate the system for our students. An agile system, which is relevant to today's youth and valuable to society, and shaped by real reflection and real feedback, real insight into the unique abilities of each and every student. And only teachers have that perspective because they walk with the students every day. For our schools to be truly awesome, we need to conclude only these three things. First, that our educational system must be ready to adapt and happy with change. And that our students are in fact ready and eager to learn and motivated by games and peers. And that teachers, second only to parents, have the best opportunity to educate and mentor our society's youth. Thank you for your time.
That was a pretty interesting presentation.